Hi everyone. You know when there's like a presentation going on or there's an event and you're trying to sneak through the back, or you're in class and someone's presenting, or the teacher professor is speaking and you're trying to just like sneak your way through the back and not get seen or noticed or heard, but you end up making the most noise and like everybody turns around and looks at you. That's how I feel coming back to this podcast. Like I'm trying to quietly sneak back in, like, hey, as if it hasn't been 5 months since I have filmed anything, uploaded anything. Hey, I like to say it as I went to the store to go get milk. You know, you all know how that goes. But let's just get right into it. Let's first of all, let's see if I remember the intro. That's number one. Let's see. Hi, welcome to the Serial for Breakfast podcast, the podcast about all things we wish we could edit out. I'm your host, Amiya, and welcome to episode 3, or when something like that. Let's just address the elephant in the room. Let's just get right to it. Where have I been for the last 5 months? To put it plain and simple, a lot has happened in the past 5 months. Like a lot. I am in a new relationship. I have a boyfriend. I got 2 different jobs, babysitting my siblings, editing a podcast, figuring out if I still wanted to do grad school slash completing that application, and then trying to come up with backup plans. If I don't get into grad school, or if I decide ultimately that's something I don't want to do, that's a whole ongoing process, and sometimes it's mentally draining. Um, Birthdays, oh my God. The amount of Libras that I personally know, y'all, that whole end of September to early October, literally it feels like, I think it's like a span of like 2 or 3 weeks where it's like it feels like everybody I know, their birthday shoved into one. I'm talking like birthdays a day after each other, some on the same day. It was so much. It was a lot of happy birthdays, planning birthdays, going to birthday parties. So much was happening. Love you, Libras, but y'all are everywhere. Everywhere. I was traveling to go see my friends. It was just a lot was happening in the span of almost like half of a year, even though it went into a different year. So yeah, I'm fully aware of the fact that I haven't come back to this podcast in a minute. Last time you all saw me, it was what, Leo Virgo season. It was August. Now we are in a completely different year. It's January. My birthday's coming up. It's Aquarius season, if I do say so myself. Yeah, I get it. It's been a lot happening in my life. And I get that I have not been here. I have said, "Oh yeah, I'm coming back," or "Yeah, I planned an episode." "Oh, I filmed it," which is all true. Whenever I would tell people that, "Oh, I filmed an episode or I planned it out," I actually did. It's just I I am someone that is much bigger on quality versus quantity. So months ago, I could have very easily sat down, set up this camera, got my mic, and just gave you all some shitty episode. And honestly, I didn't know what to talk about. And I didn't have the time to sit down and edit it. I didn't have the mental and emotional space to sit down and talk about things. Like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. So I could have just thrown something together and been like, here's episode 3, and kept going. But I honestly did not want to. And when it comes to something that I'm passionate about and I put my name on it, I want it to have a good quality. I want it to be something nice. I just don't want to give you guys shit and be like, here, well, I uploaded it. Like, no, like that's not, I don't like that. And I don't want it to feel like that. I don't want to basically regret doing something or posting an episode, or I don't want to carry resentment towards it because I'm like, oh my God, I got to go film this because I said I would, but I don't really want to. I don't want to do that, especially to something that's more of a leisure activity. Nobody's forcing me to do this. This is something I decided to do for myself and slightly for other people. Let's be honest, it's really for myself. So the fact that I'm not obligated to do this really made me not want to just put something out there to put something out there. And like I said, I had a lot on my plate. I came up with this little plate analogy. I think everybody has different size plates when it comes to, what they can handle. You can toss a little bit of this on there, add your sides, your main dishes, and you can pile on as much as you want. But at the end of the day, that plate, the size of the plate is not going to change. So you keep piling stuff on, but eventually some stuff's going to fall off your plate. Your plate's not going to hold it all. And that's kind of how I felt about this podcast. I had put so many other things on a plate that there just wasn't room for this. And if I tried to add it, I knew something else was going to fall off or it was going to fall off. So instead, I just had to get a different size plate, get a better quality plate, i.e., give myself the mental, emotional space and time to come back to this podcast and actually want to do it. I feel like when people put out content, you can tell whether they want to do it or not, unless they're just really great actors, they fake it for a check, whatever. You can tell when someone's into it and when they're not. And yes, sometimes in life you just gotta fake it till you make it. But when it comes to something like this, like I said, something that's leisure, something that I'm not obligated to do, why am I faking it? Why don't I just wait till I feel better to do so? So while I can apologize for taking such a long hiatus and an indefinite hiatus and not really, being so certain and for sure of like when it would come back and what the next episode was going to be about, I said I was going to have a guest for this episode. As you could tell, it's just me. So I do apologize for kind of that lack of consistency and lack of being on top of my game. But I will not apologize for taking the space for myself and doing what I felt was needed for my own mental and emotional health. And that's that. So now that we addressed the elephant in the room, we can kind of move on a little bit, kind of. But I do want to say, moving forward with this podcast, this is still something I want to do. I don't want to make all these promises and then just like skip out on them. That's not really what I want to do. I want to be upfront and, as honest as I possibly can with you guys. I don't want to promise weekly episodes. I don't, because I don't know if that's something I can do, if that's something I have time for. I think I want to more so go the route of bi-weekly episodes, so 2 a month. I feel like that's good. That gives me enough time to edit them, to move things around, figure out what I'm going to talk about. It's like there's always something to talk about, but at the same time, nothing to talk about, if that makes sense. Because I don't want to always talk about everything that everybody else in the world is talking about. But then at the same time, I also want to be like, well, these are current events. I can chit chat about it. These are important things that matter. It's a weird thing. It's like when there's so much to talk about, it almost feels like there's nothing because there's way too many options. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. um but yeah, I'm thinking more so bi-weekly episodes. I still do want to have guests on here. I will say though, you all can expect better quality. I do have a ring light and a new camera stand. I do have a new mic. uh it's hidden somewhere in a corner because, no joke guys, I spent 4 hours setting up a camera stand and a mic. The mic still didn't even get set up because I kept trying to, make it work and hear and see if the audio was working, because I didn't want to set this whole up, spend like 45 minutes talking about something just for it to not pick up anything or record. I would be really upset, and that has happened to me before. So I try to avoid that at, all cost. But yeah, I spent 4 hours trying to build this and it still didn't get done. I felt like I needed to be like an engineer to put that together. I would rather build a whole display from IKEA than put that together again. That was a hot mess. And it's still not done. So maybe you'll see the mic in the next one. I'm not promising anything. Like I said that before. I already said it. I'm not promising that. I'm not doing that. But yeah, how can I put that all together? Basically, what I'm saying is, more than likely, you can expect bi-weekly episodes. They will be better quality. And you can expect me to post a little bit more, because that is genuinely what I want to do. I want to come back to this and really make it something special. So yeah. All right, now we fully addressed the elephant in the room. Now we can move on to other things. So, segueing into the whole reason I started this podcast in the first place, film and television. Let's talk about it. So, I recently went to go see Mean Girls. I know Mean Girls wasn't a movie for everybody. It's considered a chick flick, yada yada yada, whatever. But I went to go see the remake of it, of the original movie that came out in 2004. Actually, I thought it was the remake of the 2004 movie. Incorrect. It was a remake of the Broadway version that came out in 2019, 2020, something like that. I don't know why it got turned into a musical. I got a love hate relationship with musicals. Like they're there, they're okay, they're fine. I don't always think we need to sing. We could just speak. We could talk about it. That's all. That's probably my biggest critique of the movie is why are we singing so much? Can we not? Can we shut up and just speak? I will say it takes talent to turn, a 10-minute dialogue into a 2-minute song, of course. But why? We don't need to. That's my 2 cents on it. But I don't really want to talk about Mean Girls itself. It's more so the thought of Mean Girls kind of sparked into something different. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole of thinking about things. There's been, in the last couple of years, I want to say maybe since like the pandemic or so maybe 3 or 4 years, a rise in reboots and remakes and kind of bringing back these nostalgic things, specifically things from like the 90s or the early 2000s, right? And I personally think this all started in terms of like us seeing a bigger wave of it because of COVID. We were at home, we couldn't really do anything, writers couldn't be in the rooms, actors couldn't be on sets. You could not really produce anything new unless it was already filmed or until we got to a certain point where, we had all these tests coming out and we had vaccines and people felt a little more comfortable being around each other, right? So with everybody being stuck at home, we were left to binge watch. We were left to kind of go back and watch all these old shows that, oh, this came out when I was like 10 or I was 5 and now I'm rewatching it. And then it seemed like once when we got sort of a sense of normalcy and the world started to come back a little bit more, we started to see, okay, new TV shows are coming back out and films are coming back out. And then the strike happened. So then we took a big break from seeing anything new. And I think these two things coupled together have really pushed this whole, in my eyes, a little lack of creativity. Because when you do remakes and reboots, like, yes, they are nice, they're fun, we love to see nostalgic things, but it's also like, okay, why don't we have any original ideas, you know so i I kind of want to say that I see the pros and cons of reboots and remakes. Let me say that. I think they are nice because, like I said, they bring us back to a nostalgic time. They bring us back to something we loved. We get to see, where these characters went and how did they modernize it? How did they make it more inclusive? Oh, they took out those jokes because those were offensive, things like that. I think it is nice to see. But at the same time, I wonder if, we take away the value of the original piece a little bit. It reminds me of when you have like a collectible doll or action figure and you leave it in the packaging and over time the value of it increases and at some point you could sell that thing for like thousands of dollars. But once when you open it and take it out the packaging, you devalue it. It doesn't have the same meaning as it once had. To somebody, they might still love it and cherish it and want to pay, a decent amount of money for it. But most people are going to be like, oh, well, no, now it's ruined. Now you touched it. It's got fingerprints. You played with it, all that stuff. Part of me kind of thinks the same way about, certain TV shows and movies and just certain aspects of a different time. Um, for an example, I think about the show Friends. Whether you love or hate Friends, I personally am a big fan of it. Um, of course, you have millions of fans that have wanted them to. That train is loud. I don't know if y'all heard that. Apologies. But there have been a lot of fans that wanted the show to come back. They were like, did Ross and Rachel have another kid? Like, where are they still together? Who does Joey end up with? Because the show ended with him being the only single one. Like, where are Monica and Chandler's twins? Just Phoebe, do Phoebe and Mike have kids? Everybody wondered all these different things, and they wanted to see these beloved characters who they, saw parts of themselves in or parts of people that they love in come back and follow their lives. And I remember hearing when they did the reunion back in 2020 or 2021, something like that, that the actors and the writers and the producers all kind of said the same thing of like, well, we gave you all, these great 10 years, these 10 seasons of this show, and we just wanted to keep it for what it was. We could have, brought all these people back, but we wanted to keep it intact, keep, you know, it's sacred almost, put it in like a display at a museum, just appreciate it for what it was at that time. And we don't have to go back to it. Instead, we can come up with something new and talk about other things and have different TV shows. And in a way, part of me like understands it and part of me agrees with it. I really don't know why I agree with it though, because it's like, well, yeah, like this was great, so why don't we bring it back? Or why don't we continue to make it special? Why don't we modernize it? Why don't we make it more inclusive? Why don't we follow these characters? But in the same breath, it makes me think about the whole idea that like certain shows and movies could not be made in today's time. They could not exist in today's world because we live in such a hypersensitive world, which is both a good and bad thing. I think it's great that we recognize certain things, we can call things out, we try to be less offensive to people. But in the same breath, I think we're hypersensitive to a lot of things, and there's parts of cancel culture that are a little toxic in my opinion, because we're quick to jump on a bandwagon and cancel somebody for something, and sometimes it's not even true, or you can't even believe everything on the internet, or that's not really at all what they said, or there's actually no problem with that. We just immediately think it is. Things like that. So it's like certain things might be outdated, and when you try to bring it back and do things different with it, you kind of change what it was. And part of me wonders, are you making it better, or should you just take all those ideas and put it into something different? Does that make sense? It's I saw someone, it was a couple years back. Uh I think someone was speaking about Marvel specifically, and or was it DC? It was either Marvel or DC, but they were talking about how they don't want to see certain superheroes turned into like the black versions of certain superheroes. They're like, why don't you just give us our own superheroes? Why do we need the black version of this? Because it's just a play off of that. It's not really original. You're just taking something that wasn't inclusive and now you're making it inclusive, but it's like we still have all of these other same qualities. So it really doesn't make us that different. We don't have our own thing. We're not special. We're still like an added piece of it. We're still a section of it. It doesn't make us our own entity, which to an extent I can kind of I can see the point. I can agree with it. I do think there is something to having your own thing and being original in your own space rather than just piggyback off pig, whoa, come on. Piggy backing off. There we go. Piggybacking off of something. I do see definitely the value in it. 100%. I don't know. I see the argument on both sides. I'm also curious, what do you all think personally? Like, do we need to have a remake or a reboot of everything? Or should we leave those things for what they are? Or, is it okay to do it? Is it okay to modernize it, make it more inclusive, make it better, maybe? Um, or, should we more so lean into, let's just do a reunion with the cast and let's just see where the cast is at and let's have them reflect on, this great show and television history that came out 20 years ago? Should we maybe do something like that rather than bringing it back and trying to redo it with some of the cast members, not all the cast members? That's the other thing. Uh, when it comes to like reboots and remakes, I'm always curious about how much of the original cast is going to be there. Are the original writers there? Because depending on what's happened in life, unfortunately, some people just aren't alive anymore to be a part of it, or some people don't want to be a part of it. Maybe they got typecasted in whatever role they were in, and they tried so hard to break out of that because that's happened before. Or, maybe they didn't personally love the show they were on despite other people loving it, so they don't really want to come back to it. Who knows? Who knows? But I say all that to say that like the rise of the reboot and the remake, I think I want more original ideas. I think I want us to branch out of it every now and then. Sure, it's great for nostalgic purposes. We can relive the shows of our childhoods, but at some point it's like, okay, are we coming up with new things now? Are we doing different things? You know, I would love to hear you all's thoughts on it. Do you think we need them? Do you think there's too much of an influx of them? Do they lack originality? Do they make them corny? That's also the whole thing of are the sequels I guess I'm going to toss in sequels and reboots and remakes. Are they ever as good as the original? Are they ever better than the original? I think it's rare, but it has happened before. You've had some sequels that have been actually better. And it's like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good. I like this." I will say though, I think one show that is actually doing a pretty decent job and it's kind of rebootish remake way is Bel Air, based off of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And I think what's different about that is it's a change in genre. You know, Fresh Prince of Bel Air started off as a comedy. You know, it was goofy, it was funny. Every now and then you had your serious moments, like when Will had the whole thing with his dad. You know, every now and then you would get some of those, but it was more so, it was a comedy, it's a sitcom. Versus Bel Air is more dramatic. You know, you focus on a little bit more of these issues. It's a little bit more serious, but it still keeps a similar concept. I think that's a really great way to do it because you're not exactly remaking the exact thing, but at the same time you're kind of like shaping it into something new. You're having this idea and you're like, okay, this was good. Let's make it a little bit different, better. Which I feel like my point might have just contradicted what I said earlier. See, like I said, I go back and forth. It's a hard topic to debate because you can really see both sides of it. That's why I want you all to comment. You all tell me what you think about that. And if you even care. um but yeah, that's those are my 2 cents on the rise of the reboot, remake, sequels. I don't have it to binge or to not binge for this episode because I just kind of wanted it to be a quick little, hey, I'm back, and let me chit chat about this one thing. Honestly, but I will have another binge or to not binge in the next episode. I will. But yeah, I just want to close this episode out by saying thank you all for the support. Thank you for listening or watching this episode at all. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for supporting me while I took a little break to figure some things out. Just thank you all. I appreciate it so much. And I hope you all will continue to support me and this podcast. Yeah. So thank you guys. Wait, is that how I started? I've been your host. No, this has been the Cereal for Breakfast podcast. Okay, this has been the Cereal for Breakfast podcast, the podcast about all things we wish we could edit out. I'm your host, Amiya. Thank you so much for listening to episode 3. And I will see you all in episode 4. See ya.